Hey, Judy.
Lisa, it's wonderful to see you.
And you too.
Thank you. Thank you. It's wonderful to be seen.
We see each other. Awesome. So today we are continuing last week's discussion. We were talking about meh.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. I was so dense when you said that the other night. I didn't even pick up on, huh? What are you talking about?
And
Nah.
I thought it was funny because when we were talking about it with our sidetrack sisters, um, mom, Sandy, did not know what meh meant.
No, and Michelle did a great imitation. She, she said, Mom, meh.
Yeah, exactly. And afterwards, I always look for fun quotes to add to our Facebook blurb, that we put out, telling people that the interview or the conversation is done and available for the podcast. And oh my God, well, you can do it, it's time to change the world or not. It's like just anytime you have a goal or you say something and then it's like, nah,
Yeah,
that's what we're talking about today.
exactly. Very well
So,
described.
Met is something that both you and I have dealt with on and off throughout our entire lives. I don't know that we've
Clearly.
actually sat down and identified it as such. I think we've often talked about it as procrastination.
And it's not procrastination. It's just like, I really don't give a damn. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't need to do this right now. And you
Mhm.
know what happens to me? I buy Activia in 4 packs and I'll buy 3 of them. That means I've got 12 days. And I'll reach for the 12th one and I go, where did those 12 days go? What did I accomplish? And it isn't it weird, just that little thing. And so
Hmm.
the next time, I think when I put those 12 Activias in the refrigerator, I'm going to have a goal for each day of those 12 days so that I
Oh,
can feel like
interesting.
I accomplished something.
I love
Yeah. So,
that.
yeah, because otherwise it feels like today I'm opening the first one and tomorrow I'm opening the 12th one. Well, something happened in the middle there, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in my life, yeah, days bleed into weeks and months and years. And yeah, sometimes I'll talk about the things that I'm doing and moving and grooving and shaking, rattling, rolling. And I don't appreciate the things that I'm accomplishing
Exactly.
because
Yeah.
of what we're going to talk about today.
Absolutely. So, what do you suggest? What should we
Well,
do
last week
next?
we kind of talked about we were just leading into that whole thing. What is apathy? It's that feeling of meh. And we talked about, do you want to change? Or are you just kind of like, I'm 62 years old and this is who I am and I'm all good. I've done the things that I wanted to do and now I'm ready to just sit home and take care of those grandbabies. And it's like, awesome, great.
Do you
That's
know
not
what I
me.
learned? What I
Hmm.
learned yesterday? Do you know what
What?
the opposite of great is?
What? Meh.
Good.
Oh,
Good. People will say the opposite of great is bad. Mm-mm. When something is bad, we're more likely to make a change and make a decision to change. When something's good, we often couple it with the word good enough. And so
ooh,
we don't move ahead. It's not
good enough.
great, but it's good enough.
Mm-hmm,
Time
mm-hmm.
to really think it through.
Wow, that's exactly what we're talking about here, Judy. That's
Mhm.
exactly what we're talking about. Good enough. We are encouraging ourselves as well as other people to move beyond good
Good
enough.
enough.
Yeah,
Exactly.
because it's not. I don't want to sit in the land of good enough. That's not where I want to be. So moving forward. So today we're going to get into, yeah, how to move from good enough into great. And the first step of that is really to have a big picture, to really sit down and have a vision for what you want. And like you and I were talking about before, if you don't have a big vision
Hmm.
and it's not written down,
Hmm.
particularly if it's not written down, you don't have a vision.
You don't have a vision. If it's not written down, it's not part of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And
Exactly.
it's not, you don't even have to take out what you wrote down and read it again. It's the act of writing it down that emblazons it on your soul, I swear. And I don't know why, but it works.
It at least gives you a vision. It gives you a path so that you have a roadmap. So when you decide to do something, is this getting you toward closer to your vision, or is it getting you farther from your vision? Or is it just, once again, good enough? Just 1 second. Katie was just calling me, so I'm gonna call him back.
Okay.
Um,
So what do you recommend as far as, okay, one thing you said to me earlier, and I think there's value in saying this again. What we are talking about is apathy. We're talking
yes,
about, we're not talking about the state of depression.
right.
So if you don't know if you're just ambivalent, or if you're really clinically depressed, chat with your doc, talk to somebody who's professional. We're not saying we can solve depression, heavens no.
No.
But if it's simply everyday good old fashioned meh,
Right.
that's what we're dealing with, right?
Exactly. Yes, yes.
Okay.
And having a big picture vision, I think, really gives you you were talking about a blueprint.
Mhm.
And you remember back in the day, there's this great book called If You Don't Know Where You're Going, You'll Probably End Up Somewhere Else. It's so true that unless you say, this is important to me, it's not going to happen, because often the things that are important aren't necessarily the easy things. And there was I don't remember where this came from, whether I read it or I heard it. If you talk about what's important to you and you put that on one side and you just think about, this is important to me, my business is important to me, my family is important to me, general things like that. And then you sit down and you actually, for a day or two or a week, sit down and you schedule out your days after the fact, not schedule them out, this is what I want to achieve. But if you actually sit down and write down what you do on a daily basis, do those two things match up? Are you actually focusing on what you say is important to you? There's a really good possibility that you aren't.
Stephen Covey wrote a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. And one of the chapters in that book is talking about urgent versus important. And he said, most of us spend our days handling what's urgent. Your kid's having a crisis. They forgot their lunch.
Yes.
You were emptying the dishwasher and you dropped a glass and you've got to get the glass up off the floor so the dog doesn't step in on it. Urgent, urgent, urgent.
Yes.
And so what happens to important on that list is, here's urgent, 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 and important is below my picture. You don't even see it for the day.
Yeah.
So what do you do at the end of the day? You say, now tomorrow I'm going to deal with that important thing.
Yeah.
Tomorrow things happen again.
Of course they do.
There needs to be a way of looking at your day and helping put urgent in its proper place.
Or at least keeping the important in the forefront so that you still slip the important in amongst the urgent.
Exactly. You don't go from urgent to urgent to urgent to urgent. You give important a place. You hold a place for it, right?
Yes, a placeholder. And by having a place for it and doing a little bit every day, we'll talk about later, you're still going to move forward towards that, what's important to you, right?
Exactly. Yes. And even if you chip away at important, a slice at a time, that's okay. As long as you can, when you reflect on your day, you can look back and say, well, today I had 3 small periods of time where I worked on that important goal.
Thing, that important goal.
That is successful.
Yes, exactly.
And reach around and pat yourself on the back, because so many days don't have that success.
Yet.
unless you intentionally place it there.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, the other thing is with that big picture, with that plan in place, once again, if you don't have it written down, it doesn't exist.
Exactly.
That is so important. I think that this is kind of where it gets messy. When you're thinking about that big plan, one of the things that, lots of people would say, I don't know what I really want. I just know that I don't want this, just
Right.
not this.
Right.
And so I think the second thing I want to talk about here is when you're developing your plan, I think it has to have a lot of reflection
Mm-hmm.
and um,
Exploration.
yes, what do you really want to spend your life on? What do you really value? Who do you want to become? What is important to you? And I think that kind of self-evaluation can only take place in silence, in meditation,
Mm-hmm.
in journaling, in purposeful times of reflection.
You know, Lisa, I want to say I have told this to people, and I have said how valuable the reflection and the meditation is. And I've had them say, I don't have time for that. That drives me crazy to even think about sitting in silence. And the reality of it is, in order to know yourself, you must create that vacuum of busyness in your head so that your real self can shine through.
Mm-hmm.
And no, it's not wasting time. And at first, it might feel like that, but it's one of those things, even if it's 5 minutes practiced every day.
Well, I was just going to say 5 to 10 minutes,
Mm-hmm,
excuse me, is a really good place to start.
mm-hmm,
And I believe there's a book called The Miracle Morning,
mm-hmm,
and where that person came up with, I believe it's 6 components that
mm-hmm,
you need to incorporate into your morning to have a miracle day.
mm-hmm,
And one of them is meditation.
mm-hmm,
And they don't talk about that process taking any more than 10 minutes a day.
mm-hmm. I think it's surprising how much can reveal itself to you in 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And what I like to do is after the 10 minutes, I like to write down what I learned.
Mm-hmm.
And you think, well, I don't have to write it down. It was me. I am going to, no, you're not going to remember it because you're going to get involved in breaking the glass in the dishwasher, all the stuff. So, just having a little notebook and just write down what came out of that 10 minutes. Because, like you said, the writing it down for some reason imprints it on your mind, and it makes it so
Prints it on
much
your
easier
heart.
to recall on your heart. That I call it the 18-inch journey from the head to the heart.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Perfect.
So I think, over this next week, right now, I didn't write down a plan for 2024 for myself. That is the first step. And I've done meditation and reflection on this. I have a sense of what it is, but in order to go to the third and last part of overcoming apathy, it has to be written down.
Mhm.
And then that can often look like a very big, audacious goal.
Daunting goal. Yeah,
Daunting,
exactly.
yes. And it doesn't have to be, because the third part of this process is really breaking it down into little pieces.
Mhm.
Let's talk about that activity that you had a few months ago, raking your backyard breeze area.
Yeah, I've got this gravelly area in the backyard, and you can get all the leaves up off the grass with the lawnmower,
Mhm.
but you can't run the lawnmower on this gravelly part because it just throws stones everywhere. So go ahead, let's talk about
Okay,
that.
so you called me one day. It was a Saturday and it was a coaching session.
Mhm.
And you were feeling really overwhelmed and frustrated. You had all of
Yes.
these things on your to-do list, and you had this breeze area was just like you wanted to get it done so bad, and you felt so frustrated that it was looming, and you just it was just you were in shutdown.
Yes.
And
I was
so
paralyzed.
you were paralyzed, and yet it had to get done. So what did I say? We kind of
You said,
explored this a little
okay,
bit.
first of all, there were some steps here. First of all, you said, well, just say I'm going to rake the breeze for 30 minutes. We talked about that, and I said, that still doesn't do it. And so then you said, just focus on the leaves that are in one area up against the fence, the leaves that have been there, you know, a good long time, and you want to get them up. And set a time limit. Okay, now that really worked.
That resonated with you.
Yeah, so I went outside, I looked at my watch, I set a 15-minute time limit, and I raked along the fence. And I had a bag that I was putting this in, and then I was going to take the bag and dump it on the front because they were still picking up leaves right on the tree border. Well, 15 minutes went by and my bag was only half full. So I went,
Can I call you in just a second? Okay, bye.
so I went, okay, I'm just going to finish filling this bag. So I did that. And it ended up being about a half an hour total. And I stood back with my hands on my hips and I looked at the fence and I went, success, this looks great. And I dragged my bag out and dumped it on the tree border, and it just felt so good. And I repeated little sections that week, so it didn't take all of my time, it didn't spoil my day. The other thing is, I'm a little older, it didn't exhaust me.
Exactly. Yes, it
So
didn't kill you.
Right. So it made it manageable, it made it satisfying, and it made it doable. So I think manageable, satisfying, and doable are three things to look at when you're setting up steps in your plan.
Exactly. And the other thing that I want to say about this next part, when you're looking at the steps that you need to achieve to accomplish any particular plan, goal, resolution, whatever we're going to call it, I want to make sure that we talk about not just having a to-do list, because putting a list together for yourself on a Saturday and saying, I want to do these things. If you had put on your list, rake the breeze.
Next.
That's pretty much where you were, you know, that was on your list for the day, but it wasn't going to get done because it felt so daunting.
Overwhelming.
When we're talking about putting things, writing it down, we're also talking about really looking at it in a terms of an achievable, in an achievable statement. You know, I don't want to get into SMART goals and all that hula, but really what you said, what you said before is just look at the part against the fence. And so you could have written that down, get leaves away from the fence, 15 minutes.
I think that's
is how we need to write down our lists. Or
well, and there's a big why with that. Why do you do that? Because setting up your day, you are not going to be able to devote 8 straight hours to any one goal. You know, you're going to have interruptions, you're going to have urgent things, you're going to have all of that. So you know, there's hardly anything you can't stall off for 15 or 20 minutes, right? So you can commit to that and work with that, and then take care of what was urgent or whatever. But it makes your day doable. And I think for me, if I can look back at my day and see 3 things that I had on my list that I've accomplished, I feel pretty good.
Exactly. And when you accomplish 3 things a day, holy baloney, you're
That's
going to
21 things a week.
And look, and you how many cans of Activia do you have? Only 14?
Oh no, they come in 4-packs, so I buy 3 of them.
Okay,
and
12.
There's 12. I was telling you earlier, I put these 12 containers of Activia in my cupboard, in my refrigerator. And I take the first one, and it seems like tomorrow I'm taking the 12th one. So it has become imperative for me to decide, okay, before I take another Activia, What's going to get crossed off my list
Mm.
so that I
And
know.
yeah, it's a way to, it's almost like dragging yourself through the muck, through the procrastination, through the apathy, make it until you fake it until you make it kind of a thing. Sometimes the thing that gets us out of apathy are those little baby steps that kind of get us going.
Mm-hmm.
And that little sense of accomplishment leads to that feeling of big accomplishment, like
Mm-hmm.
you had when all the leaves were done in the breeze.
Absolutely.
And you stood back with your hands on your hips and were like, damn, I
Yes.
did it. Yes.
It's done. I did it. And it felt so good.
Now
And it
tell about what
looked so
happened the
good.
next day. Tell what happened the next day.
We had a windstorm and it took all the leaves off my oak tree, which had a late bunch of leaves to drop. And I have leaves on my breeze again. But you know what? The same process,
Yep.
practice daily, can get the job done, I guess, a second time. So, and
Yes.
then it snowed, so it didn't
So now
matter.
you don't have to deal with that one anymore. So you
Until spring.
put that one off. But I think even if, it's glorious achieving small things, moving us through. It's almost like when you have this big, overwhelming, amorphous, kind of like the quicksand. And you know, do you realize I was just thinking about this the other day? When I was a kid, is there actually such a thing called quicksand? Does it
Yeah.
exist anywhere? Are you
Yeah,
sure?
I want to say there's quicksand in marshy areas, and there's
But that's not
quicksand.
quicksand, that's a bog.
Let me think.
Quicksand, like yellow.
Western movies.
Yeah, exactly. Where is there actually quicksand? I don't know
I
if there
don't
is
know.
quicksand,
We're
but
gonna research that.
you
Maybe.
know, it was always in movies and books, quicksand, people drowning and slowly disappearing into quicksand. Does that really exist anywhere?
I don't think much in the United States, but it possibly. I bet Indiana Jones could find some for us. Oh,
Hmm.
I'm sidetracked. Okay, let's go on.
So anyway, this week my goal is to come up with my big blueprint for 2024. I want to do I've already done some meditation and some reflection. So I've done that part already, and I want to get it down. I'm actually going to put it up on my wall. I have got a big blank wall right now in front of me, and I'm going to put it on my wall.
That sounds perfect. Make it visible. See it a little bit every day. Yeah,
Mhm,
absolutely.
mhm. Because it's by breaking it down that I'm going to accomplish that goal or those goals. But I also and I like organizing it then into other chunks. For example, I like you can achieve anything, you can't, but you can't
Can't achieve
achieve
everything.
everything. I would like to look at that big blueprint and then take the rooms and say, okay, I'm going to work on this room for the next chunk of time, and then take that blueprint. I'm going to work on this room for this chunk of time,
I
and
love
really
it.
give some good focused energy to some different rooms on my blueprint.
You know, one thing I would like to say, and it's maybe backtracking a little, but apathy is not always recognized. When people
Mm.
have this feeling of, I just don't feel motivated anymore. I'm just blah, 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 blah. I
Mhm.
think a really important step in all of this is what they call the principle of reflection. And it is recognizing that that's where you are. And then you have the opportunity to make a choice. And that choice can't be made by anybody else but you.
Mhm.
Do I choose to make a change here? Or do I choose it's good enough? There's no wrong answer. Either one is acceptable, but you need to be truthful with yourself.
Mm.
And once you've made the choice, when you have reflected and become aware that that's where you're coming from, and you make the choice to do something about it, just that step in the process can take you from meh to no, I can do something about this. And being hopeful in my life
Mm.
is the best way to move myself forward.
Yes. I love that. Making the choice. Am I okay with being good enough? Or do I want something else? Yeah.
Mhm, mhm.
It's not necessarily even labeling it as good, better, or just different. Do I want something different? If I want,
Yes,
just even different can be hard to move into. Just
that's right.
different.
That's right.
It's not better or worse. It just moving away from good enough?
And there doesn't have to be any judgment around it. It's just, it's your personal choice. Is this great? Is this good? Is this good enough? If it's bad, you're more likely
Yeah,
to sign
exactly.
on.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think if it's bad, if it's awful, then yeah,
there's
you've
no
got this.
question.
There's
Yeah,
no question. But it's the good enough that we're battling against here.
exactly.
I think that's a
Lisa,
good place to stop. Yep.
I think we've got to go and get going on our important list. Gotta
Okay, love you, Judy.
love you too.
Okay, talk to you later.
It's been great. Bye
Okay,
bye.
bye-bye.